This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and we're going to look at one of the more innovative Windows 8 PCs on the market. This is the Sony Vaio Flip. We have the 13-inch model, and sure, it looks like a tablet right now. 13.3-inch display, full HD. Nice tapered design, 2.89 pounds, so it's a bit to hold up, and you're probably going to rest it on the desk, and maybe if you're using digital art note-taking, that makes sense. But it has this really unusual kind of hinge back here. And you just pull it up like so, slide it, and you can put it either in presentation mode or, more interestingly probably for a lot of people, full laptop mode, so you're not compromising on the keyboard. And we're going to look at it now. So this is the Sony Vaio Flip 13. I think this is one of the Windows 8 convertibles people have really been looking forward to in the second half of 2013. And there is a lot to like here. I can tell you right now, just seeing this on the shelf in Best Buy, where you can actually get one of these, although they're selling out really fast, it's one of the prettier looking laptops there, high quality kind of stuff. But Sony's known for that sort of thing. And that means it won't be cheap. You're looking at around $1,000 to start for a Core i3, and you really want the Core i5 or i7. Core i5 you'll get turbo boost, as with the i7. The Core i3, no. So for $100 difference from an i3 to an i5, get the i5. Anyway, full HD display here. Touchscreen, of course. This is Sony's Triluminos display with their really interesting display technology under here. Allows for very bright, very colorful display on this, and we'll tell you the display specs and the color accuracy, but I can tell you it's really very good, but we'll get to that later. Also, something else that is interesting about this, and this is just here to confuse folks right here. It used to be if you could use a pen with one of these, an active digital pen via N-Trig or Wacom, it came in the box. Rule of thumb, easy to say, Asus Tai Chi, if you got the model with the pen in the box, that was the one that had the active digitizer built in. Same thing with Lenovo ThinkPad tablet too. Well, here it is. Sony just said, well, forget that convention. All the flips have an active digitizer. They all work with an N-Trig digital pen. Those of you who follow digital pen technology know Wacom and N-Trig are the two big players. N-Trig does not have WinTab support, and that means no pressure sensitivity in Adobe Photoshop or Adobe programs whatsoever until they move over to the modern Windows Ink API. Anyway, you got pressure sensitivity in other apps. We'll also cover that, but still. Confusing? Yes. Maybe they just want to bring that price down a little bit because they sell this separately for $40. Now this is actually a generic N-Trig pen that N-Trig sent to me. Same technology inside. It's a little bit shorter. And I'm going to whip out the pen for our Sony Vaio Duo 13 so you can see the one that Sony gives you. It's a little bit longer. So here for comparison, this is the generic pen that works just fine, and this is a lot like what you get with the HTC Flyer, if you remember those old tablets. And here's the Sony one, so it's a little bit bigger, a little bit longer. Sony pen is nice, metal feeling, it's got a good weight to it, and it has two buttons on here, which can be possibly handy. No eraser on the back end, that's a Wacom thing, sorry, so you're going to actually assign the button if the application doesn't automatically want these buttons to be the eraser if you need that. This is an active digitizer. That means this is a very precise pen with 256 levels of pressure sensitivity, and you get palm rejection. As soon as you bring the pen to the screen and you see the visual indicator, a little dot or crosshair is going to show up right there, it's detected the pen. Once it detects the pen, it will no longer detect your hand, so you won't get vectoring when you're writing or drawing, and you won't do things by accident. Obviously, it works for tapping and clicking. I just did that too. Certainly handy for artists, definitely handy for note takers. I think that's going to be the primary market for this. Inside the machine we have 4th generation Intel Haswell Core i5, i7, like I said, even i3 CPUs. This is not the Y series, this is the U series, so this is your standard Ultrabook CPU, not the slowed down lower power Y version. 15-watt CPU inside, so standard Ultrabook. Anything you can do with an Ultrabook you can do with this guy right here. This model, and this happens to be the same configuration you can get at Best Buy, sells for $11.99, has a Core i5, the usual 1.6 gigahertz plus turbo boost to get even faster, 8 gigs of DDR3L RAM, and that is configured dual channel, and 128 gig SSD. This has an mSATA SSD in it, not the newer PCIe that Sony used in the Vaio Pro 13. So same technology as you get in the Vaio Duo 13. Not a big deal to most people. Both mSATA and PCIe are fast. Even if PCIe is faster, most of us are not doing something that really requires incredible psycho speeds. The keyboard deck on this is aluminum. You can get this in silver or in black. I kind of really like the way the black looks. Obviously, that's up to you. Some of the bigger models are also available in, well, pink too. And the lid is also aluminum. Very nice looking. It does pick up some fingerprints though, and you can see the seam here because this does that weird flippy thing like I showed you. But overall, a very good looking product. Pretty slim too. It's got the tapered design here. You see the overhang. It's an interesting industrial design that Sony did. It looks kind of neat. And the bottom is actually plastic here, which we'll forgive because it doesn't feel freezing cold against your legs, all that kind of thing. If you want to remove the bottom, there's a couple of little screws right here, and you're going to have to take off the rubber here to access some more screws underneath this rubber. But RAM is soldered on board, so unless you want to upgrade the SSD yourself or change out the wireless card, which you probably want to because there's a good wireless card here, that's it. 8 megapixel webcam here, or camera really, with Exmor sensor, and it comes with card scanner software, OCR software, so you can actually use this on documents or business cards to do some OCR, which is nice. Little lifty lip right here on the front makes it a bit easier to do it. And on the side, here's where that stylish overhang might be a little bit annoying. Here we don't have too many ports, so it's not a problem. There's the charging port. And Sony changed the charging tip on this. It's a little different than on the Duo 13, Duo 11, and the Pro, so they're not interchangeable. But anyway, your headphone mic jack is right here. Speaker hole right there, obviously fan grill. On this side, though, you can see the overhang does hang over the ports a little bit. Now the overhang gets fatter. If we turn it this way, you can see as you get to the bottom where there are no ports. So that's where the serious overhang action is going on. So it's not blocking these ports too much, but if you have something fat here, you might need a little USB hub or something like that to get to it. Really more problematic is how close the two USB ports are to each other. If you want to use two USB devices at once and one of them is kind of big and bulky like a LTE dongle, 4G dongle, then you might run into some interference there. SD card slot, full-size SDXC card slot. Card goes all the way in. It does not stick halfway out. Always nice. Won't get stuck in your bag or anything like that. Full-size HDMI port. That's our power button right here. Now, they put it over here because when you're using it in tablet mode, they want it to still be accessible instead of putting it on the keyboard deck. And back here, we have another set of volume controls. Again, so when you're using it in tablet mode, you have access to volume controls without having to use the on-screen if you don't want to. There are little hard plastic lips again here that set the display off the desk a little bit, and I wish they were soft rubber or softer somehow because they're kind of slippery, so it's easier to slide this guy around on the desk by accident because, well, they're hard and slippery. The rubber here does help some, but not as much as you might hope. Again, 2.89 pounds, so not too heavy, has 13 inches go. That's pretty competitive. I think this is probably going to be one of the better selling iterations of all the sizes that Sony offers just because it is still manageable as a tablet at this weight. The 14-inch model, it's obviously larger because it's 14 inches. The 14 and 15-inch model, by the way, have Ethernet port on them too. And they can be configured with spinning hard drives or SSDs. But the 14-inch one is 4.32 pounds. So you're getting heavy to use that unless you're going to rest it on the desk in tablet mode. And the 15-inch is around 5 pounds or so. All of those, again, work with the N-Trig pen. If it's not included, you can buy it from Sony. They sell it for $40. Lastly, on the lid here, we have an almost diamond-cut looking Vaio logo that looks pretty nice. So aesthetically, it's very nice. It's also pretty rigid. Since they went with aluminum instead of carbon fiber, you get a little extra rigidity there. And the display section is actually thicker than the bottom section, which is unusual. Usually it's the other way around with these. As we open up, you can see reasonable thickness there. Now, that's because they have to accommodate the flippy hinge. So to do that, there's a release lever slide right over here on the front. Very easy to do. And then you just take it and you do that. And then it's sort of like the Dell XPS 12. You know how it goes, wee, like that. So you can put it in presentation mode and tip it as you like so. Or just use it that way so you don't have to use a stand when you're using it as a tablet, although obviously it's going to have a pretty big footprint on your table here compared to a tablet using a stand. And this is what the mechanism looks like from the back. So it's very clean. Not all like the Duo 11, which had a kind of Byzantine steampunk assembly, and perhaps even cleaner than the Duo 13 that we'll show you in a minute. Now, I know some of you are worried about this kind of hinge and you're afraid that it's delicate, but boy, does it feel sturdy. It helps that the magnets lock it in place and there's nothing exposed for damage. And let's see what the other side looks like just so you can see as well. And that's what it looks like from in here. I'm not really worried about it. Honestly, Sony Vaio Duos, which have perhaps a more scary looking design even, they've held up well. There's no problem. And Sony really tests these things. They have videos showing about them being manipulated a bazillion number of times. So unless you have a real psychodestructive, I don't know what, in your household, you know, who's going to grab this and do their best to try to break it. I don't think anything's going to happen. Even if you do grab it, there's like no give. There's like, it's really sturdy. I wouldn't worry about it. And if you want to move it back, you just push it. It's pretty stiff. There's magnets here, so it's not going to do this by accident. That's a very good thing. And one thing that Sony doesn't say you can do, but I kind of find myself doing, is using it sort of like the Duo 13. There's no real lock in place, but it's stable enough, so sometimes maybe you just want to use it like that for a moment. You can do that. Glossy display, as you can see here, loves reflections. That's one unfortunate thing about it. The keyboard is backlit. In fact, you can see the light coming out from behind the keys right now. That's controlled by the ambient light sensor. There's no brightness settings that you can control for that. It's pretty bright all the time, generally speaking. Light comes out from around the keys and illuminates through the keys as well. It's quite bright. It's quite adequate. Not subtle like the Samsung Ultrabook 9 Plus, but certainly it gets the job done, and it's very even backlighting. It's not that kind of uneven backlighting that we saw on the Pro 13. Taking a look at the keyboard, we have an absolutely normal design right here. Nothing surprising. We have our arrow keys right here. A nice large Synaptics trackpad. It works pretty well. Actually, I find it works better for multi-touch than single touch. Is weird. Sometimes if you press and hold to click, the cursor jumps a little bit. This seems to be a problem with Windows. Often we need some driver updates to fix it. Machine ships with Windows 8, not 8.1. Really surprising because it came out just after the release of Windows 8.1. What's going on there, Sony? So we have to do some little Vaio updates first to get ready for 8.1, and that's what we're running now on this. And mostly it's gone well, except for one thing we're having a problem with is it doesn't want to go to sleep while the machine's open. If I press the power button, it will. If I close the lid, it will. Otherwise, it just sits there and the fan whirs. By the way, you can probably hear it right now. The fan's always on. For those of you who like dead silence, this will probably drive you crazy. Will Sony change this with the firmware update? I really don't know. Sometimes they put out some noisy laptops. The Vaio T series comes to mind. Sometimes they do fix that, but using our CPU temperature utility right here, it's always quite cool. So there's no reason for that. So here you can see we've got core temp running, and those temperatures are very cool. When you're talking about 100 watts permissible, or 100 degrees centigrade, sorry, permissible, that's very low what we're looking at right now. There's no reason for the fan to really be on and running fast enough to be audible. So Sony being overcautious with temperatures, maybe that's the case. I don't know. Usually you see Ultrabooks running at 45, maybe sometimes even 50 before they really start kicking up the fans so you can hear them. Inside we have Intel dual band wireless 7260 802.11 BGN. Not the AC adapter we saw in the Sony Vaio Pro 13 and not the Broadcom adapter that's used in the Duo 13. So those of you who are worried about people complaining about wireless issues with either of those, this has a different wireless module in it, so we can't make generalizations there about one product to another. Don't even think of it. Anyway, good choice I think to go with the Intel N adapter because that one has been less twitchy and less problematic than the wireless AC adapter has been in several laptops so far. We saw good throughput and good range. Honestly, with our Duo 13, it was quite usable. We never had problems with dropouts and speed, you know, at far from the router on the Duo 13. Wasn't among the best that we've seen, but it was still usable. This is stronger still, and it's been very stable for us, no complaints. So we use an Apple Airport Extreme network, the N variety, not the AC variety on that. Also has Bluetooth 4.0 high speed and NFC. There's a 720p 1 megapixel webcam up top that's, well, decent enough for Skype chats. That's pretty much what it's for. Not the wildly brightest thing. Unfortunately, smartphones actually have better front-facing cameras often, for the flagships anyway, than laptops do, but it gets the job done. One nice thing about Sony laptops is you don't have to just buy what you see in the store. You can buy it from their website, and they often have discounts, so keep an eye out for that. If you're finding this a little bit pricey right now for your 1200 or you want a higher end configuration, you want to wait. But if you need more RAM, for example, actually this one already is maxed out at 8 gigs of RAM, but if you don't want a 4 gig base model, you can get 8 gigs. If you need a larger SSD drive, you can order it with that. If you're getting the 14 or 15 inch ones and you don't want that spinning hard drive that they might have at Best Buy or your local store, you can order it with SSD drives. So a lot of versatility there in terms of the configurations that you can order, and a little bit better than Samsung, where gosh knows, with the Ultrabook 9 Plus, it's been hard enough just to get a Core i7 model with 8 gigs of RAM. We've been waiting for months for that, and it's just finally started shipping. With Sony, just order from their website. What you want is what you can get. Now we have it next to the Sony Vaio Duo 13, which is much the same concept in a different styled package. And as you can see here, the Duo 13 is a little bit thicker, but not too much of a difference. Obviously, the display is always facing out in the Duo 13. That is the way it's designed. You don't have the ability to put it into standard notebook clamshell mode, but same 1080p display there, you get the idea. And if enough of you want this a smackdown between these two, just shout out and we'll do a smackdown between these two. Of course, the difference with the Duo 13 is the way it works with this kind of hinge right here. And you see, you don't get quite a full-size keyboard. So that's why the Flip exists. For those who don't want to compromise on the keyboard and they also want the more durable way of carrying it like this, well, that's why the Flip exists. Now, with the Duo 13, obviously, it's really geared much towards people who are going to use tablet a lot, probably note takers, artists, where the screen is ever ready on it. But there's the difference. In terms of display quality, wow, this is one of the nicest displays you're going to find on an Ultrabook, even if it's not super duper crazy high resolution like the Lenovo Yoga 2 Pro or the Samsung ATBook 9 Plus that go up to 3200 by 1800. Well, 1920 by 1080, which is what this is, full HD, that's just really a good sweet spot for a 13-inch display. Windows 8.1 handles the scaling nicely. But more importantly is color reproduction and vibrancy. And Sony's Triluminos display, wow, it brings movies alive. You just want to stare at the screen. It looks so good. It's probably almost a productivity enhancer because you just enjoy looking at everything on it. Here's our color gamut right here, 96% of sRGB, so you have almost full sRGB coverage and 75% of Adobe RGB. That's the same as the Vaio Pro 13 and the Duo 13 and the same as other top Ultrabooks that have the best displays on the market. So you're getting very good color gamut there. Brightness is at 300 nits, which is quite good, and contrast is about 800 to 1, so that's also very good. It's just stunning for looking at photos and videos, and text is sharp too. Certainly, there's enough resolution there, and the Metro UI handles text very well. If you just take a look at an article right here, nice, crisp, and clear. Very easy to read. Whites are white here. Good display. Now for our Crystal Disk Mark scores, this measures SSD speed. These are okay speeds for an SSD. The write speeds are a little slower than I'd like to see. This is a Samsung 128 gig SSD in it. But for all intents and purposes, for most people, you're not going to be able to tell a difference anyway in write speeds between a faster SSD and this one. It's adequate. This is full Windows 8 64-bit, and we've upgraded it to 8.1, as I said, and we've got the Metro browser here. Of course, you have the full desktop browser as well, but we're going to just check out a video so you can hear the speakers. Now, right after we got pushed an update for audio, and boy, did it make things louder. At first, it was the usual meek, quiet Sony experience. Got a lot louder, and I also used the custom settings to boost up loudness levels, and it made quite a difference. It's bloody loud. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at what's going to be one of the hotter notebooks probably for the year. This is the late 2013 edition MacBook Pro 13-inch. Now that means Retina because they're doing away with the non-Retina. So suddenly that looks beautiful and it's plenty loud. It's not the richest, deep experience exactly for audio. It can get kind of shrill there, and we have our volume set to, well, let's just check that. So you can see 58 right now. So that's only 58% volume, and it's kind of pretty wildly loud. Definitely a good software update from Sony. Sony includes a bunch of software in here. 128 gig SSD had only about 55 gigs free out of the box. One interesting thing about the Windows 8.1 upgrade is it always has given us about 5 extra gigs free, so we actually went up to about 60. Sony includes software on here that you might not be interested. Of course, they have their Crackle movies on here. That's really just a web shortcut more than anything else. They include ArtRage Studio 3.5, and that's a great Windows API aware drawing program. We're going to take a look at it in a minute, so you get pressure sensitivity with ArtRage on it. And they also include all of their premium titles here. You can see the shortcuts right here. So we have Sony Movie Studio Platinum here. We have Acid, we have SoundForge. So those are nice. If you're going to use those are nice value-added programs there. That cost you a couple $100 if you were going to buy them separately. But if you don't edit movies, you don't edit sound, you don't need your Windows version of GarageBand, well, you can always uninstall them. But again, they're a nice value added for people who make use of them. For synthetic benchmarks, this behaved just like you would expect for an Intel Core i5 Haswell to do. 4434 for a PC Mark, and the latest version of PC Mark 7, that's maybe a little lower than we might have expected, but within range. We've seen ones go as high as 48 or so hundred. Again, this has the Core i5-4200U with 8 gigs of DDR3 RAM in it. You can also get the Core i7-4500U if you wish. W prime 22.6 seconds, perfectly normal and in line for a machine with these specifications inside. Now, things get interesting. We have Intel HD 4400 integrated graphics here, which is your usual with the Intel ULV CPUs. But if you get the 15-inch, you can really go to town, and you can get switchable graphics. So you'll have Intel HD 4400 graphics switchable with NVIDIA GeForce GT 735M dedicated graphics. That's a low mid-range GPU, but that's enough to get you more frames in World of Warcraft and that sort of thing. And Sony has a pre-built model that has that option with 2 gigs of dedicated VRAM, by the way, and a 2880 by 1620 resolution panel on the 15-inch, and that's $1,800. So that's not cheap, but boy, that's pretty nice. And when you're getting up to 15-inch, the added resolution can be enjoyable, where it's still perhaps overkill in the 13.3-inch like we have here. Battery life on the machine is okay. It's not stellar. To get it down to 2.89 pounds, so you could actually maybe hold it like a tablet and not feel like you're going crazy with the weight of it. Smaller battery than in the Duo 13. That's interesting because they're similar weights, about half the battery capacity, 3170 milliamp per hour battery. And Sony has bounced all over with their claims for battery life with all the different flip models. They seem to change that every 2 days on their website. Right now they're saying up to 10. But sometimes they say up to 6. So we're finding that with brightness set to 60%, which is really nice and bright, I like it that way, Wi-Fi on, Bluetooth turned on but not being used, that we're getting about 6 hours on a charge. And that's with this fan just pretty much always blowing. If they can get it so that the fan does not run all the time, certainly run times would increase. And obviously if you're going to use more draconian power management settings, in fact, you can choose the quiet option, and that's going to drop CPU speed in half, and it's really still adequate for playing full HD video and stuff. Then you could probably push this out to 7.5 hours maybe. I know you note takers and artists want to see what the pen's like, so we're going to test out OneNote, and we're also going to test out ArtRage. So here we are in OneNote 2013, and we have our pen in hand right here, and the key again, if you want palm rejection, wait till you see the little dot right below the tip right here. Tip accuracy is pretty good in tip tracking. That's one thing that N-Trig is quite good at, sometimes better than Wacom. However, you have to get closer before it actually detects the pen compared to Wacom's difference in the technology there. There is no lag when you're inking. It's just perfectly quick and fast and very nice and very smooth, and there is pressure sensitivity. I mean, if I write lightly versus heavily, you can see the difference in those line strokes right there. Makes for a more natural experience. Even when note taking, it's always nice. And I just chose the convert to text. You see how quick that was, and indeed it did a fine job. So very nice, very fast experience. And now even with some pages I have that have a lot more notes on them, it's quite quick. So let's take a look at ArtRage next. Now, Sony hasn't impressed me too much with their driver update handling lately. I know with the Duo 13, it took about 2 weeks, 3 weeks before their servers even acknowledged it existed to give me driver updates. And out of the box, ArtRage didn't work properly with the pen. Now, how did Sony ever ship something like that, right? So I got in contact with ArtRage and with N-Trig, and they eventually worked it out. So that update is available right here now, so you're going to get proper behavior. We have the pencil tool selected right now, and I'm going to just draw a simplistic flower pot with my pencil tool, and it tracks just fine. And now I'm going to press heavier, and you see I'm getting a heavier line. So pressure sensitivity 256 levels works just fine for anything that uses the Windows Ink API. So ArtRage is going to work, Fresh Paint is going to work, Sketchbook Pro will work as well. Now Adobe Photoshop, not until they actually get Windows Ink APIs, which I've heard is supposed to happen by the end of the year, but nobody wants to count on something that hasn't happened when they make an expensive purchase. So if drawing in Photoshop is very important to you, or in Corel Painter, then I would say still get something with Wacom if you need to buy something right now. So that's the Sony Vaio Flip 13. It's available in 13, 14, and 15-inch sizes. All of them, if you want some decent specs, you're looking at around $1,000, like I said. And certainly, it's one of the most usable Windows 8 convertibles we've seen so far. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to hit that like button and visit our website to read the full review.